Well, I have to admit, I didn't see this one coming. I did not project this. Now, if you remember, I made a video just yesterday about the Chiefs being rumored to trade Trey Smith to the Chicago Bears. And one of the details in this trade was peculiar to me after having made that video just yesterday, but we will get to that in a moment. The Kansas City Chiefs have traded Joe Thuney to the Chicago Bears for a 4th-round pick. I have 10 thoughts on the issue, but first, let's get the facts out of the way. In an article titled Joe Thuney Trade, Details agreed to send guard to Bears for draft pick from Sporting News by Colin Capici, we get the following Joe Thuney trade details. Chiefs receive 2026 6th-round pick. Bears receive Joe Thuney. I did not notice the 2026 at first and thought decently about the deal. But then I started thinking, wait a minute, I made that video just yesterday. The Bears don't have a 4th-round pick, and had to read a little bit closer, and it is a 2026 4th-round pick. The article goes on to state, the Bears gave up relatively little to add all-pro offensive linemen who will help protect the 2024 first overall pick, Caleb Williams, in his second season as the starting quarterback. The Chiefs saved $16 million against the cap by dealing Thuney, who is entering the last year of his contract and is set to make $15.5 million base salary. And then we have the tweet where everything was broken from Ian Rappaport. The Bears are expected to trade for Chiefs All-Pro guard Joe Thuney as Chicago continues to load up on the offensive line. Casey gets a bit younger, plus frees up some money to use elsewhere. Not yet, they don't, Mr. Rappaport, but we will get to that in a moment. Now, just off the top, just how am I feeling about this deal? I'm not elated. That said, it is a sensical and sensible move. It is a move that makes sense when you think about it a little bit more than I thought about it in reaction. Absolutely stunned by this move. Didn't see this coming out of nowhere. And my final thought on this deal will tell you something about how I feel about it personally. That said, there is a lot to talk about with the ramifications of this deal because it's actually a lot more complex than just the Chiefs traded their starting guard or the Chiefs traded last year's MVP, right? I mean, there are a lot of things going into this trade, and not the least of which is this. Not on the list, but I think it sets up all of the talking points that I have there. If you were asked to list the Chiefs' top priorities in building next year's team this offseason, obviously it would be left tackle number one. Well, Joe Thuney played left tackle for the Chiefs last year until the Super Bowl relatively well. I mean, not great, but there was very little there to complain about with Joe Thuney. Number two was what I thought was going to be right guard. I thought that the Kansas City Chiefs were going to have to sign a right guard because I just didn't think they could hang on to Trey Smith. Then probably you might have added right tackle to your list and maybe even left guard if you're looking into the future because Joe Thuney was always likely to retire at the conclusion of this season. He signed with the Chiefs in 2020, going to be a very old, very gray offensive lineman at the end of this contract and unlikely to have another run. So you could have very easily listed 4 of the 5 spots along the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line as needs for this offseason. And the first move Brett Veach has made is to trade an offensive lineman that started and played well at two of those positions. I didn't see it coming. Sun Tzu would be proud of Mr. Veach. But is there anything here to like? Well, there's one very clear message that this sends, and that is this. The Chiefs are in full rebuild mode. Joe Thuney was a player for the 2025 NFL season, not past that. Joe Thuney would have been an answer for the 2025 season, not past that. He would have been simply there for 1 year. Now, you probably had 1 year left with Thuney, but a fourth-round pick is a 4-year contract. And a fourth-round pick next year gets you to 2030, so long as you were able to make that pick count for something. Get you to 2030. So you are absolutely abolishing any value that you had from Joe Thuney this year, and hopefully getting something useful all the way to 2030. Okay, great, right? But it doesn't just tell us about the offensive line. No, it tells us about the rest of the team. The Kansas City Chiefs believe in youth movements. Now, I have a video that I'm going to drop either later today or tomorrow, all queued up. I haven't shot it yet, about the rumors, again, the rumors that the Kansas City Chiefs will be trading for DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf is in a strange position because he is a 27-year-old wide receiver. He's not a young guy, but he's not an old guy. So this is sort of a no man's land for what it means to rebuild your squad, unless you have to sacrifice a first-round pick, that 5-year contract with a highly drafted player, in which case probably you're not seeing DK Metcalf in a Kansas City Chiefs uniform, right? So I only mention that to say this. If the Kansas City Chiefs are in full rebuild mode, we're unlikely to see them acquire very many older players. Just to keep that in mind. They've already traded away their best, oldest player. The number 2 thought that I have here is the Kansas City Chiefs must have a plan for offensive guard this year, as that 4th-round pick is a 2026 selection. Now, because of comments that Brett Veach has made this offseason, about Kingsley Suamataia, we have to guess that's the move at left guard. We thought that he was talking about the right guard position, with Kingsley having a good future at right guard, or a high ceiling at right guard, something like that, a future at right guard, something like that. I don't remember the exact words. Here's something maybe funny to consider. What if Brett Veach is still going to trade Trey Smith? I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, and we'll get to that in a minute. But, I guess that is my next talking point. Please don't tear me down too much for this. These notes were taken very fast because I did not see this coming, and I wanted to get this video out. But we are left to assume that the left guard position will be manned by Kingsley Suamataia. They've got lots of answers, including a guy that I think we've all forgotten about, McCade Mettauer, an undrafted rookie free agent who missed his entire rookie season to injury, but the Chiefs never reached an injury settlement with him. Meaning, as far as I know, they signed him to a 3-year undrafted rookie contract, and that will stand because he was on injured reserve all season. So just to keep that in mind, because we're going to talk about some of those other players in a second here. But the Chiefs must have a plan at the guard position. We don't know it right now. The Chiefs are keeping Trey Smith. I mean, they must be, right? If so, okay. You were able... The 49ers got a 5th-round pick out of Deebo Samuel. the Kansas City Chiefs were able to squeeze now it's a future 4th-round pick, albeit, but still a 4th-round pick out of a 32-year-old offensive lineman. You can say Brett Veach lost this trade if you want. I don't know if that's true. You can say Brett Veach lost this trade because he's not getting value for this season. That's about as far as I can go with you on that. I understand being upset about it. I'm a little bit upset about it. I didn't want to see Joe Thuney go. But if you're keeping Trey Smith because you were getting rid of Joe Thuney, who had 1 year left probably in his NFL career, I think it's understandable. These aren't fun and nice things to talk about. It's not how we want things to be, but it's the way they are, right? This is a harsh reality of the NFL. There are windows on things, and we are seeing some of those windows pass by. The number 4 talking point that I have here, we are also left to assume that the Kansas City Chiefs have plans on something for the left tackle position, because at least one of the internal options at that position is going to be off the board to play offensive guard. Maybe it's Wanya Morris. Maybe it's Kingsley Suamataia. Maybe it's any of these guys. One of them is no longer a potential left tackle. Now, I put out a video about the top free agent offensive tackles just a few days ago. All of these things kind of point towards the Kansas City Chiefs might really have interest in Ronnie Stanley. They might really have interest in signing him, because you're looking at a team that is going to be keeping age and money and all of these different things a little bit in mind, but maybe not any of them completely in mind, because there are a lot of things that the Chiefs can do from this position. There's a couple free agent left tackles that are younger, but they're not top end. There's options in the draft, but you're probably going to have to move up if you want a guy who's going to impact the team this year. And that hole on the roster does start this year, even if the draft pick doesn't come in until next year. So there must be a plan of some type in place. Whether that is promoting from within, whether that is they think they saw enough from X, Y, or Z, Kingsley Suamataia, Wanya Morris, Ethan Driscoll, whether that is they're going to move Jawan Taylor to left tackle and put Wanya Morris in at right, whatever it is, they must have something in mind. And it's not what they did last year. Because what they did last year was start Joe Thuney at guard and then left tackle. That's not in the cards this year. So the number 5 thing here, this move seems to be all, the move itself, right, seems to be all about the salary cap. The Chiefs had to get under the salary cap and did not have a whole lot of fast options. You can rework contracts still. Maybe those things aren't going as fast as they had hoped. You can't just, at least as far as I know, reworking a contract means you have to deal with the player, you have to deal with the agent, you have to get those things agreed to. You don't just get to snap your fingers and do it because you want to do it because you're Brett Veach. So it's possible those things are taking longer than expected. And I don't want to talk about that part yet. So the number 6 thing that I want to talk about here, I imagine that part of the implication of this is also that the Trey Smith deal is getting reworked for a long-term answer. He is currently on a 1-year contract, meaning that both the left and right guards would have been, had they both played for the Chiefs this season, on 1-year deals. That would have been suboptimal. Now you have a new answer at left guard, and we have to imagine that your answer at right guard is being reconsidered. one of the strange things that is maybe flying under the radar with this, should Trey Smith re-sign and reconfigure his contract, he's unlikely, in my opinion, to be making, well, so Joe Thuney was making a whole lot of money. It is possible that Trey Smith reworks this contract and ends up making more in that first year than Joe Thuney would have been making this year. I doubt that. I imagine there will be an escalation to this contract. So it's possible that the Kansas City Chiefs have put themselves in not just a better position for the future as far as having youth on the roster, a mid-20s Trey Smith instead of a early 30s Joe Thuney. You're basically trading the future of one for the future of the other, but they could have put themselves in better financial position for this year if they get Trey Smith hammered out with a long-term deal. So this could be from a roster building perspective, not a current roster perspective perhaps, but because there were, like I said yesterday, there were no intimations of moving Trey Smith to left tackle. He could not do it. He does not have that flexibility, at least in my opinion, and it's apparently in the coaches' opinions too, otherwise they would have given it a try. From a roster building perspective, however, long-term stability, this move makes a lot of sense. Basically trading the future of Joe Thuney one season for the future of Trey Smith several years, and possibly less money this year as well. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about here, this number 7 point, the more I think about it, the more factors move into this, the more sneaky good this move seems. You were going to have to replace Joe Thuney next season, and you now have to replace him this season. But you have several answers. You have Wanya Morris, Kingsley Suamataia, Hunter Nurzad, Ethan Driscoll, and CJ Hansen all on the roster, not to mention McCade Mettauer, who the Kansas City Chiefs did keep through an IR season as a rookie for some reason. I did not think that he had a draftable grade coming out. I thought that he was likely to be a UDFA. Some people had a draftable grade on him. It's possible they got just another absolutely NFL caliber offensive lineman in McCade Mettauer that we just kind of forgot about because he was stashed on IR. But because Joe Thuney was scheduled to be here this year, those guys would have been burning through another year of their contract sitting behind Joe Thuney. And so long as whoever replaces him is a serviceable starter, that would have been a travesty for the team. As well as the fact that this is something else, the numbers game itself has to be taken into account. The Kansas City Chiefs had 10 offensive linemen so they carried 10 offensive linemen through last year. It's a lot of offensive linemen to keep on your active roster. They tagged Trey Smith, meaning that they were going to have 10 offensive linemen coming up into this season as well. Then you had McCade Mettauer, who would make 11, and you're probably adding a name at left tackle. That would be 12 offensive linemen. I don't care if you're the Ravens, you can't play 12 offensive linemen. I don't care what kind of crazy running game you like to play, you're not putting 12 offensive linemen on the field. You would have been wasting something somewhere. But none of those guys, with the exception of Creed Humphrey, right? With the exception of Trey Smith, who now you think is going to be your long-term starter, none of those guys, not Hunter Nurzad, not Wanya Morris, not Kingsley Suamataia, not Ethan Driscoll, not CJ Hansen, not Jawan Taylor, I don't think. None of those guys would have yielded you what Joe Thuney did. So what you're leveraging there is the long-term value of Joe Thuney, which is very low because it's just this season. the starter level of Joe Thuney, which is very high because he's very good, versus the starting level at offensive guard, not the highest leverage position on the offense, with someone who you think can play the game. Now, I don't think that Kingsley Suamataia or Wanya Morris or Hunter Nourzad are Joe Thuney. I just don't. I think they're going to be good enough to start. I think we've seen Kingsley Suamataia and Wanya Morris play serviceable football at the left tackle position, something that's a lot more difficult than the left guard position. So as long as someone is able to step in, then you've got value there. You have value out of Joe Thuney that you would not have had otherwise. Plus, it's likely Joe Thuney would have retired at the end of this season. He would not have signed with another team at the end of the season. So you would not have yielded a compensatory pick for him walking away. By trading him for a 4th-round pick in the 2026 draft, what you're doing is you are getting that compensatory pick value from him in the same year that you would have gotten it. You just lose a year of labor from him. This move works in subtle ways on so many levels that it's honestly fairly impressive. I'm not the biggest fan of the move. I wanted to see Joe Thuney finish his career as a Kansas City Chief. I wanted to see Joe Thuney blocking for Patrick Mahomes next year. But let's put it into Madden terms. Okay. You have to get the left tackle position figured out. You were going to have to get the left tackle position figured out anyway. You weren't going to go into 2025 with Joe Thuney as your starting left tackle. Okay, great. Now, put it in Madden terms. Joe Thuney at left guard is what? A 92, a 93 rating? Something like that, I would say. What is Kingsley Suamataia at left guard? Like an 85 probably? Those 7 points of difference, how many games will they lose you? Not reps, not series, how many games? How many games does that lose you? Because you're getting value for a player, Joe Thuney, traded away, that you would not have gotten for him otherwise. You look at a 4th-round pick, maybe that 4th-round pick ends up being your number 2 corner. Jalen Watson won the very first game he was ever on the field. I believe that Chargers game was week 1, right? Won you a playoff game with a pick against the Jaguars. That's going to have a higher return on it. Maybe, just maybe, in the 2026 NFL Draft, an incredible left guard falls to the 4th round. Well, there's serendipity if ever there was any. The number 8 point that I have to talk about here is this. Brett Veach goes big, baby. And because he does, I very highly doubt this is the last move that we see from the Kansas City Chiefs, the last big move that we see from the Kansas City Chiefs. We have talked all offseason about those contracts getting reworked. They're right now just about at the cap. We'll talk about that in the number 9 point there, but just about at the cap. They can free up something like 8. I don't remember the exact numbers. I made the video a couple days ago. $8 million from Travis Kelce's contract, $8 million from, or 15 million, I think, from the Patrick Mahomes restructure, $8 million from Chris Jones. So say that's 30, right? Right there. Maybe. Something like that. We'll be conservative and call it 25. Let's say you rework Trey Smith too, and you get his cap hit this year from 23 down to 18. There's another $5 million. All of a sudden, you're looking at $30 million. Well, guys, their draft class is going to cost them, I think, less than $4 million because of the places where they're picking this year. all of a sudden you have the resources to sign a couple players. And I don't think Brett Veach is going to be subtle with those moves. The number 9 part here is this. They are now at the cap. Mostly. They are $2 million over the salary cap. They're going to have to do something still. But anything that they do is just straight cash homie that they get to spend on free agents. Anything they do at this point is just money they get to spend. The Chiefs somehow are, in my opinion, again, nothing confirmed, going to look very different heading into the 2025 season than they ended the 2024 season. And I've done videos on this channel time in and time out about how different each of their Super Bowl rosters has been from each other. 1 through 53, incredibly different every time. And they've gone to a lot of Super Bowls. The number 10 thing that I have to talk about here is this. I know it's a cutthroat business. I know you don't win Super Bowls making friends. But I really hope Joe Thuney signed off on this. If you were trading him to, for example, Miami, I'd understand if he didn't. He's going to go and he's going to have great weather. If you were trading him to the Cowboys, yeah, he's probably not going to win a playoff game there, but he's going to be a king in a huge city. If you traded him, for example, to the Texans, yeah, that would kind of suck for us, but he's going to another upstart team. You traded him to Chicago. I don't think Chicago's going to be very good this coming season. I know there's the whole Caleb Williams factor, etc. Maybe. I don't see it with Caleb Williams. I just don't. The weather's going to be terrible. It's going to be miserable to play in Chicago most of the season. Then, like I talked about trading him to the Cowboys, and all of a sudden he's a king everywhere he goes. I don't think that's the truth in Chicago. I don't think that's the truth in Chicago, so I hope. And maybe this is unfair to even speculate about. Maybe this is an unfair point to make at all. But man, I hope Joe Thuney signed off on this. Anyway, guys, that's what I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. This is a shocker. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.